Please join me now in a spirit of prayer and meditation. After our spoken prayer and a time of silence, we will sing together Spirit of Life, hymn number 123, which is also printed in your order of service. We'll sing first in English and then in Spanish. This morning's prayer is by my colleague, Victoria Weinstein. In the spirit of the prophet Amos, the Unitarian minister A. Powell Davies prayed, "Help us to remember, O God, that from those to whom much has been given, much is expected." Let us join our hearts and spirits in prayerful reflection. To whom much is given, even more is asked. We have been given the bounty of this beautiful day, and we have been given the gift of the worship tradition that draws us together in this house of hope and memory, of learning, of healing, of growing, and of serving. We lift up grateful hearts. We have been given the inspiration of our siblings in faith who walk with us the path of the free religious life, who companion us in our joys and our sorrows, and who are ours, by some design of fate or necessity, to care for and to love, to forgive and to cherish for this time of our lives. We lift up grateful hearts. We have been given minds with which to wonder and to reason, and we have been given voices to speak and to sing and to shout against injustice. And we have hands to work and to build the better world that we would have for ourselves and our children and our grandchildren. We are asked to use them all in the service of love and justice. We lift up grateful hearts. We have been given the divine spark as children of God all, whose health and wholeness requires us to tend to the life of the soul. In our rushing and our doing, may we not forget whose we are and what we truly are, not human beings having a spiritual experience, but spiritual beings having a human experience. We lift up grateful hearts. We ponder this mystery together, glad for one another, blessed by the abundance of our lives, and called to give abundantly of ourselves to it. Amen. Our reading this morning is by Rebecca Parker. It's called Soul Music. Music sounds in the depths of our hearts. It is music of joy, voices in the coffee shop, a clattering ragtime, or the wind whooshing through the sea grasses, a graceful waltz. It is the music of sadness, the cello, a cinnamon sound, soft and low, through the broken windows of Sarajevo. The bagpipe keening plaintively as community gathers to mourn its dead. It is the music of assurance, a mother singing, "Sleep, my child, let peace attend thee all through the night," or the congregation singing, "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound." This music that sounds in the depths of our hearts is soul. To live with soul is to live deeply rooted in knowing and feeling that we are connected to one another and to the earth, that our life is held in the embrace of something larger than ourselves, a wisdom, a presence, a grace, To have soul is to hear life's deep music and to move in response to its pulse, rhythm, and harmony. To have soul is to be awake to life. To have soul is to live with a sensitive awareness of the real presence of other human beings and the earth. It is turning your hands to the work of justice and compassion, your mind to the call of wisdom, your heart to decisions for life. It is making your whole being an act of praise. On this small planet adrift in the ocean of stars, we feel the pull of our ties to one another, the pulse of the earth held close to our ear, the rocking of our being in the bosom of Abraham. This is the music of soul. But we can lose the ability to hear this music. Susan Griffin writes, "We never lose soul, but we lose knowledge of soul." We cease to know ourselves and others. We begin to believe the world is soulless, and our belief makes this true. When we become deaf to one another's presence and relate violently to each other, we lose the music. Our personal soul, as well as the soul of our nation and our global community, rests in our ability to honor the relational bonds of life. Our souls are weary. Even before the anguishing events of the dawn of the 21st century, there was much in the news to trouble our souls. The increasing criminalization of the poor, hate crimes, exploitation of the earth's natural resources, widening gaps between the rich and the poor on a global scale, resurgent racism, neglect of children, gunshots in school libraries. These painful realities suggest that as a society, as a world, we are not moving to the rhythm of soul and its tender imperative that we love one another. Estranged from soul, we are numb, not fully awake to life, to feeling, to seeing and knowing the world, or to taking part in it in a soulful way. In the state of anesthetized feeling, we risk doing harm to one another. Cut off from the music that sounds in the depths of our hearts, we may turn aside from those who are suffering, or we may overlook the breathtakingly beautiful. As author Alice Walker puts it, we may walk by the color purple and not even notice. Estranged from soul, we neither laugh nor cry, we neither savor nor save the world. At a meeting years ago of the Unitarian Universalist ministers, the topic of the canvas sermon came up. That's what we call the sermon delivered right before the pledge drive, when we ask members to give generously over the coming year. Most of the ministers at the gathering were moaning and groaning about it. They hated talking about money, they said. They didn't like singing for their supper, they said. They didn't know how they could make it energizing and inspiring every year, they said. Finally, a senior colleague, Patrick O'Neill, stood up and put an end to the fussing. "I can't believe all this griping," he said. "This sermon is the easiest one to write all year long. If we can't talk about what the church does for people and why they should support it, we should all find a different line of work." And then he sat down. I'm not a big fan of talking about money myself. It was always a source of argument in my household growing up. There seems to be shame involved in both having too little and too much of it. And yes, it is awkward asking you to give sacrificially when I know that a part of that generous gift will go to my own salary. And yes, in year 8, I've already used up all of my favorite stories about the masons building the cathedral and the villagers making soup from a stone and the teenage boy learning about budgeting. But when faced with Patrick O'Neill's admonition, the writing of this sermon certainly became a lot easier for me, because all I had to do was look around and notice what was happening all around me. I started at my office door, where Pastor Brenda leaves me fresh flowers every single week, because Reverend Dave once mentioned to her that it was important to care for the minister's soul too. And then I continued out into Acker Bosworth Hall, where Kate Wallace Rogers was making final edits on a new poem she had written for Inspiration Weekend. I heard that when Susan had her heart trouble, Jane and Bruce visited her in the hospital, and Mel and Allison brought soup to Loretta. I watched as Diane Kopser arranged for rides to and from doctor's appointments for our members. And David stopped by the parsonage to measure my door for a new storm door. I caught my breath as a group of us paraded up Commercial Street in a second line to honor the life of Reverend Jim Cox. And I noticed that someone had come by the meeting house with mums for the walkway. I listened as the choir sang, "Courage, my soul, and open wide my heart, and here is my home." And as Kurt played his harp and Chan played the cello for water communion, as we all brought our small cups of water and our full selves forward to share with each other. I watched Ryan Cook dig hardened sand out of our chalice holders so we could have a place to put our prayers of joy and concern. And I counted checks as the Social Action Committee raised over $3,000 for the Bahamas after the hurricane. I watched Barbara and Linda act as surrogate grandmothers to Archie, taking him under their wing. In the office, a roster of volunteers fills in for April while she's on vacation, and they collect checks from dozens of people who have donated money for our taxi fund to get our seniors to church. I ate a delicious and healthy lunch that Stan and Ada made for our new member class while keeping track of 11 people who signed up for a spiritual leadership training all the way in Worcester. I watched as Pat Medina bravely served as worship host for the first time, welcoming people into our space, and I put out my hands to gratefully receive thousands of dollars that Scarby has collected from his audiences all summer for my minister's discretionary fund. And I wrote out checks for rent and utility bills for those who are struggling. I put out more chairs as dozens of people showed up for our last racial justice potluck and talked from our heart for hours. And I giggled joyfully as Ellen taught our young people how to balance peacock feathers out on the front lawn, and shared ideas with her about beginning a new program for our members called Chalice Groups. I heard about Marty leading a walking club outing to Hatches Harbor and drinking in the breathtaking views out there, and a group of you who participated in a beach cleanup with Zoe Lewis. And I saw the beautiful flowers that Jen Shannon bought for our new members so that they know that they have truly found a home here. I walked by the theme-based children's packets for Sunday services that Lorraine has been making each week, with coloring pencils that are sharpened and ready. And I heard about how Bill Docker helped our sexton Duca enroll at Cape Cod Community College, and how Kate is tutoring him each week. And I even moved a dead rat off of our pathway so that none of you would have to see it, because that is how much I love you. I look back on this year and I remember how we've worked through disagreements peacefully. We've negotiated fair salaries for our staff who we value. We've showed up at rallies and vigils and protests. We've been by the bedside of members who are dying. We continue to navigate the complexity of aging and memory loss together. We mourn and honor those who have passed on. We bless new children coming into our community. We celebrate and ritualize marriage vows of our members and the wider community, and even visitors who know that their love will be celebrated fully here. We dig deeply into the theological questions we have. We wrestle with world events and our own consciences. We lift up our voice in song. We sit together in peaceful silence, and we laugh together to create a joyful noise. We tend to our souls here, and we care for the world here. I know exactly what this meeting house does for people and why we should support it, because love is the spirit of this meeting house, and this is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. So no, this sermon wasn't hard to write, which was a relief, because I really don't feel like getting into another line of work. But what is hard is going out into the world each day when I leave this place. Because when I go out into the world, I receive very different messages. I turn on the TV and I learn from our president that when you disagree with someone, you should make fun of them and call them names or make threats. On the radio, I learn that my worth and dignity and my employment rights are up for grabs and can be debated by the Supreme Court. At the supermarket, I glance at the magazine covers and learn that what is important is whoever has the most money and fame, or the slimmest waist, or who wore it best. On the Provincetown Community Space Facebook page, I learned that sarcasm and caustic wit are the best ways to prove your intelligence. On the news, I learned that I should be scared, no, terrified, of those who are unlike me and of change. Online, on social media, I learned that I can only support veterans or immigrants, black lives or blue lives. And at the home goods store, I learned that I can fill every void in life by buying something, and that I can feel on top of the world for just a minute when I get the max for the minimum. So I actually need this place for more than a paycheck. I need this place as a touchstone and balm for my soul, because the rest of the world is eating away at it. But here it is being fed. The rest of the world is dragging me down. And you raise me up. I didn't share the whole reading with you this morning from Rebecca Parker. She goes on to say this: Now more than ever, we must be dedicated to soulful living, to participating in the world in a soulful way. We must cherish our congregations as places where we can come together to welcome one another's tears and laughter, and to think deeply about the things that matter most. We must continue to be advocates in our society for a way of being together in which the bonds of connection that weave us together in one life are honored, not broken. Let us make it our aim, she says, to move in harmony with the deep music that is always sounding. Even when we have momentarily lost our ability to hear or feel it, the music is there. Let us respond to the rhythm and harmony that pulses through life, ever refreshing our souls. And let us move in the world as singers and dancers of the Spirit, composers of justice, and artists of peace. Let us respond to the rhythm and harmony that pulses through life, ever refreshing our souls. And let us move in the world as singers and dancers of the Spirit, composers of justice, and artists of peace. Let us dwell together in peace, seek the truth in love, and help one another. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be.